Hello, dear readers. Welcome to Novel Spotlight. This is an audiobook of the novel The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Part 12. Chapter 18. The only way to learn is to live. Nora looked around and found herself laying in her own bed. She checked her watch. It was 1 minute past midnight. She switched on her lights. This was the exact life, but it was going to be better because Voltaire was going to be alive in this one, her real Voltaire. But where was he? Voles? She climbed out of bed. Voles? She looked all over her flat and couldn't find him anywhere. The rain pattered against the window. That much hasn't changed. Her new box of antidepressant were out on the kitchen unit. The electric piano stood by the wall, silent. We'll see. There was her yucca plant and her 3 tiny potted cacti. There were her bookshelves, with exactly the same mix of philosophy books and novels and untried yoga manuals and rockstar biographies and pop science books. An old National Geographic with a shark on the cover and a 5-month-old copy of Ali magazine, which she bought mainly for the Ryan Bailey interview. No new edition in a long time. There was a bowl still full of cat food. She looked everywhere, calling his name. It was only when she went back into her bedroom and looked under the bed, then she saw him. Voles! The cat wasn't moving. As her arm were long enough to reach him, she moved the bed. Wolsey, come on, Wolsey, she whispered. But the moment she touched his cold body, she knew, and she was flooded with sadness and confusion. She immediately found herself back in the midnight library, facing Mrs. Elm, who was sat this time in a comfy chair, deeply absorbed in one of the books. I don't understand, Nora told her. Mrs. Elm kept her eyes on the page she was reading. There will be many things you don't understand. I asked for a life in which Voltaire was still alive. Actually, you didn't. What? She put her book down. You asked for the life where you kept him indoor. That is an entirely different thing. Is it? Yes, entirely. You see, if you have asked for a life where he was still alive, I would have to say no. But why? Because it doesn't exist. I thought every life exists. Every possible life. You see, it turns out that Voltaire had a serious case of, she read carefully from the book, restrictive cardiomyopathy, a severe case of it, which he was born with, which he was destined to cause her heart to go at a young age. But he was hit by a car. There is a difference, Nora, between dying in a road and being hit by a car. In your root life, Voltaire lived longer than almost any other life, except the one you have just encountered, where he died only 3 hours ago. Although he had a tough few early years, the years you had him was the best of his life. Voltaire has had much worse life. Believe me, you didn't even know his name a moment ago. Now you know he had a restrictive cardio whatever. I knew his name, and it wasn't a moment ago. It was the same moment. Check your watch. Why did you lie? I wasn't lying. I asked you what your cat's name was. I never said I didn't know what your cat name was. Do you understand the difference? I just wanted you to say his name so that you would feel something. Nora was hot with agitation. That's even worse. You sent me into that life knowing Votes would be dead, and Votes was dead, so nothing changed. Mrs. Elm's eyes twinkled again. Except you. What do you mean? Well, you don't see yourself as a bad cat owner anymore. You looked after him as well as he could have been looked after. He loved you as much as you loved him. And maybe he didn't want you to see him die. You see, cats know. They understand when their time is up. He went outside because he was going to die, and he knew it. Nora tried to take this in. Now she thought about it, there hadn't been any external sign of damage on her cat's body. She had just jumped to the same conclusion that Ash has jumped to, that a dead cat on a road was probably dead because of the road. And if a surgeon would think that, a mere layperson would think that too. 2 plus 2 equals car accident. Poor Walls, Nora muttered mournfully. Mrs. Elm smiled like a teacher who saw a lesson being understood. He loved you, Nora. You looked after him as well as anyone could. Go and look at the last page of Book of Regrets. Nora could see that the book was lying on the floor. She knelt on the floor beside it. I don't want to open it again. Don't worry, it will be safer this time. Just stick to the last page. Once she had flickered to the last page, she saw one of her very last regret. I was bad at looking after Voltaire. Slowly disappear from the page, the letters fading like retreating strangers in a fog. Nora closed the book before she could feel anything bad happen. So, you see, sometimes regrets aren't based on facts at all. Sometimes regrets are just... She searched for appropriate term and found it. A loads of bullshit. Nora tried to think back of her school days to remember if Mrs. Elm had said the word bullshit before, and she was pretty sure she hadn't. But I still don't get why you let me go into that life if you know Wolf was going to be dead anyway. You could have told me, you could have just told me I wasn't a bad cat owner. Why didn't you? Because, Nora, sometimes the only way to learn is to live. Sounds hard. Take a seat, Mrs. Elm told her. A proper seat. It's not right you kneeling on the floor. And Nora turned to see a chair behind her that she didn't notice before. An antique chair, mahogany and buttoned leather. Edwardian maybe, with a brass bookstand attached to one arm. Give yourself a moment. Nora sat down. She stared at her watch. No matter how much of a moment she gave herself, it stayed being midnight. I still don't like this. One life of sadness was enough. What is the point of risking more? Fine, Mrs. Elm shrugged. What? Let's do nothing then. You can just stay here in the library with all those lives waiting on the shelves and not choose one. Nora sensed Mrs. Elm was playing some kind of a game, but she went along with it. Fine. It seems unfair to Nora that Mrs. Elm could read the lives without falling into them. Time went by. Although technically, of course, it didn't. Nora could have stayed here forever without getting hungry or thirsty or tired. But she could, it seems, get bored. As time stood still, Nora's curiosity about the lives around her slowly grew. It turned out to be nearly impossible to stand in a library and not want to pull things from the shelf. Why can't you just give me a life you know is a good one? She said suddenly. That is now how this library works. Nora had another question. Surely, in most life, I will be asleep now, won't I? In many, yes. So, what happened then? You sleep and then you wake up in that life. It's nothing to worry about, but if you are nervous and you could try a life where it's another time. What do you mean? Well, it's not night time everywhere, is it? What? There are an infinite number of possible universes in which you live. Are you really saying they all exist on Greenwich Mean Time? Of course not, said Nora. She realized she was about to cave in and choose another life. She thought of humpback whales and thought of an unanswered message. I wish I had gone to Australia with Izzy. I would like to experience that life. Very good choice. What? It's a very good life? Oh, I didn't say that. I merely feel that you might be getting better at choosing. So, It's a bad life? I didn't say that either. And the shelf sped into motion again, then stopped a few seconds afterward. Ah, yes, there it is, said Mrs. Elm, taking a book from the second to the bottom shelf. She recognizes instantly, which was odd, seeing that it looks almost identical to the others around it. She handed it to Nora affectionately, as if it was a birthday gift. There you go. You know what to do. Nora hesitated. What if I am dead? Sorry? I mean, in another life. There must be other lives in which I died before today. Mrs. Elm looked intrigued. Isn't that what you wanted? Well, yes, but you have died an infinite number of times before today. Yes. Car accident, drug overdose, drowning, a bout of fatal food poisoning, choking on an apple, choking on a cookie, choking on vegan hot dog, choking on a non-vegan hot dog. Every illness it was possible for you to catch or contact. You have died in every way you can, at any time you could. So, I could open a book and just die? No, not instantaneously. As with Voltaire, the only life available here are, well, lives. I mean, you could die if that life, but you won't have died before you enter the life, because this midnight library is not one of the ghosts. It is not a library of corpse. It is a library of possibilities, and death is the opposite of possibility. Understand? I think so. And Nora stared at the book she had been handed. Conifer green, smooth textured, again embossed with that broad and frustratingly meaningless title, My Life. She opened it and saw a blank page. So she moved to the next page and wondered what was going to happen this time. The swimming pool was a little busier than normal. And then she was there. For the next part, stay tuned to Novel Spotlight. And please like, share, and subscribe.